something that I have to deal with regularly, where I have to decide, okay, am I putting, for each application, a separate bucket that'll store the TF state, or one bucket for all the different, infrastructure.
It's a
So
good
any best
question.
practices that,
Yeah, it's a good question, and it depends a little bit what your state backend is. Using S3 is a very painful cold start problem for
Mhm.
state backends, and if you want to have more end-to-end automation, you're going to want to reduce that. It also introduces remote state challenges when you want to query it across accounts and boundaries like that by design, but is a consideration.
Right.
We okay, and so that's S3. And if you're using Terraform Cloud, it's a whole lot easier in general using it as a state backend if that fits within your paradigm. Right now, we came from a background of deploying one state backend per AWS account that we deployed. And I like it architecturally, but I hate it from an automation perspective for the aforementioned reasons that it's just really hard to cold start it. So I would consider reducing it to a few buckets based on your compliance requirements. And if you don't have compliance requirements, just use a single bucket. Either way, all your environment stacks, components, etc., yada yada yada, are going to be broken down into different state paths within the bucket and are not shared. And you can use IAM controls to control
Hmm.
access to those.
Right.
Um,
Always make sure you use versioning with S3 in particular.
yeah, or yeah,
Yeah.
eliminate the calculus and just use our Terraform state backend, which does absolutely everything you need to manage a
Well,
state.
and I have been using that, and it's great. But also, I find that, like, one thing that really bugs me with, and that's not your module per se, it's just the way that Terraform forces you to use S3, is that, so quite often, especially when you want to do updates, you do things locally. So maybe you want to create a new cluster. So you create the Terraform files, everything's local to your machine. Then when you're finally ready, okay, I'm going to move it into S3 so I can share it with my team and people can start using it. At some point, you might want to take that down. Because maybe it's obsolete, it was a test cluster, it was for whatever reason, it's no longer needed, you'll
Yeah.
tear everything down. That teardown mechanism, like the way that Terraform has implemented this state backend, it stays in S3 even if you move it locally, right? So you have your local copy, and during that time, there's a copy in S3 that other people could be using unknowingly. Like I looked actually for a Terraform state lock command where I could say, lock this state that's in S3 so that if anyone tries to use it, they know it's busy and they can't do anything. Meanwhile, I can work with it locally again, delete things, whatever.
Yeah.
So
I think it's
yeah, I
a
haven't found a good solution
yeah.
even with that AWS state backend.
No, that's true. I mean, just food for thought. I'd say that's a little bit of this layer violation here. That is part of your foundational infrastructure piece, and
Mhm.
therefore that you don't tear down to that level generally because the capability of the tools don't support it. Of
Mhm.
which that is one minute example, but there's dozens more examples here of trying to tear down and build up across layers. A
Mm.
lot of it has to do with integration secrets and configurations. Amazon accounts can't even be programmatically destroyed without first logging into them and clicking some boxes. And even to log into it and click those boxes, you got to do a password reset. It's just a nightmare.
Mm.
So I think it's a red herring. Um, yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
to be honest about backends, I eventually used a bash script. Please don't tell me anything. A bash script that was fetching the AWS username, so your username, and using that as a key for the bucket, and also as the workspace key prefix, both things. In this way, when you check on S3, you have the username and also which is basically holding the default, and inside the same, they are overlapping and you have also your workspaces into the same thing. It's a hack, I know, but the point for me was that basically when you start using the backend, even the default is on S3, which is for me a pain in the ass, basically. Sorry, because you need to be very careful if you are testing stuff locally and then enable the backend, because as you know, otherwise you will end up on S3, even your default, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I think it's
it's
very dangerous in general. I mean, working locally is very dangerous. I mean, these are resources that are deployed into AWS where any of your developers can reach them. Yet, if the remote state isn't accurate to what, if it doesn't reflect the resources that are actually deployed because you're doing something local, that's very dangerous. And I mean, when we do development stuff, we just do it in completely isolated, either different regions or something, to isolate all of our work. But, anything that's, could be shared or accessed by other people, yeah, I think you really just got to stick to remote state and just, embrace it. Terragrant, does handle that pretty well. I mean, even just creating the bucket, we follow, a convention that uses the account name, so the bucket name is going to be unique, and the first time you touch anything in Terragrant, it creates the bucket for you or prompts you to create it. We go in and twiddle, some permissions on there for the fact, but, other than that, it's, that's pretty straightforward. But it's dangerous to do local state things. In fact, I'm trying to reconcile a whole bunch of local state that someone did now. How do I get that into S3 now? It's going to be a huge pain in the neck.
all right. Well, thank you for adding that additional context, Tim.